Yes, Dead Rising 2. The game that not only turned zombies into a reality game show, but also made me a big fan of Uranus. Dead Rising 2 is a high-stakes survival horror where the lights never go out and the zombies never stop coming. But how did we get here? To understand the complete madness of this series, we need to go back to the events of the first game. It all begins 5 years ago in Willamette, Colorado. Frank West, a freelance photojournalist, uncovered the truth behind the zombie outbreak. Turns out, the US government had a hand in the creation of these zombies, thanks to a shady experiment gone wrong. Frank exposes this experiment, and the world learned that zombies were indeed real. Fast forward to now, and everything had somewhat adjusted to the zombie outbreak, mainly thanks to a little tiny drug called Zombrex, developed by the pharmaceutical giant Phenotrans. Zombrex prevents infected people from turning into zombies by temporarily halting the growth of the parasite, but there is a catch. It needs to be taken every 24 hours. Miss a dose and, well... oh no. Phenotrans, of course, is making a killing off this little miracle drug. And what better place than Fortune City, a shiny, new playground where people can gamble their life away, literally. You can bet on anything here, but beneath all the neon lights and flashing games, trouble is brewing. Dead Rising 2 throws players into the chaotic, zombie-filled streets of Fortune City, where you play as Chuck Greene, a former motocross champion with one purpose in life, a never-ending loop of finding Zombrex for his infected daughter, Katey. As if the stakes weren't any higher, the city is looming with another kind of threat: the Psychopaths. Just like the first game, these survivors have lost their sanity due to the outbreak, driven by fear and desperation. But unlike the first, these psychopaths have embraced the apocalypse. Rather than fearing zombies, they use it as a twisted opportunity for entertainment and power, exploiting the chaos to indulge in their darkest impulses. Let's take a deeper look at each psychopath and how this game gives insanity a whole new meaning.
Hey, sweetie. I've got your medicine.
Daddy, why did Mommy bite me?
That wasn't Mommy, sweetheart. It just looked like her. Hey, buddy. Sorry if this is your place. We just needed to get some supplies.
Jed Wright, otherwise known as Jed the Mechanic, is a hulking, disturbed figure wielding a makeshift broomstick, a gruesome combo of shotgun and pitchfork that lets him skewer and blast anything in his path. While most people are fighting for survival in the zombie outbreak, Jed's enjoying the chaos a little too much, openly admitting that killing zombies, and even people, is a thrill, just without all the legal hassle. The trouble starts when Jed spots Chuck giving his daughter Katey a shot of that Zombrex. For Jed, this is all the confirmation he needs that Katey's doomed to become one of the undead, and that Chuck is just in denial. In Jed's disturbed mind, he'd be doing Chuck a favor by taking Katey out now, going so far as to say she'd be a perfect addition to his collection. His warped sense of mercy fuels a disturbing showdown as he decides to take matters into his own hands. Chuck, understandably furious, confronts Jed, who dismisses Chuck's protests, saying that killing Katey would make it easier for him in the long run. Jed, it seems, has completely lost touch with reality, convinced that he's on a righteous mission in his grim junkyard kingdom. The fight with Jed is one of Case Zero's most intense moments, as he roams the junkyard with his broomstick, looking for Katey and taunting Chuck with chilling comments about how it's inevitable. His weapon arsenal is as brutal as his mindset. At long range, he blasts his shotgun with eerie precision, but up close, he wields the broomstick to impale and shoot Chuck in one move. Each of Jed's moves hits hard, and his pattern of taunting and laughing makes him all the more menacing, giving Chuck very few windows for a counterattack. Jed's fight is grueling and punishing, and when you finally defeat him, he warns you that the government will take Katey away. Then, in an instant, he stumbles backward, knocking into a precarious stack of cars, causing the top one to slide off and crush him. The mechanic who fixed others' problems his own way meets a fittingly messy end under a pile of his own junkyard treasures.
It's time for America's most dangerous game show. It's time for Terror is Reality. And here's your host, Tyrone King.
Tyrone King, or otherwise known as TK, is the antagonist who brings chaotic glamour to the game. Charismatic and ruthless, TK thrives as the mastermind behind the brutal pay-per-view show, Terror's Reality, where killing zombies becomes a sick form of entertainment. This former music giant turned ruthless knows how to play the game. He embodies everything showbiz, embracing the zombie apocalypse as a twisted way to get his career boost. Before the fame, Tyrone had a thriving music career, known for his chart-topping album, Long Live the King. He transitioned from artist to record producer, establishing Kingtone Records. The album's success was lauded as one of hip-hop's best by Left Hand Lance, helping TK crush rivals like YRN and Schmitty Sounds. But his shift to TV would mark his true rise to power. Hired after the Willamette incident, Tyrone's ambition quickly catapulted him to executive producer and host of TIR, where audience could watch zombie carnage at a price. Tyrone's villainy escalates in Fortune City, where he engineers a zombie outbreak in order to frame Chuck Greene. Amid all the havoc, his focus stays at the bottom line. While Chuck chases clues to clear his name, TK sets up one jaw-dropping escape after another, leading to a high-stakes showdown. When Chuck finally drags TK back to the safe house, it seems like the bad guy's gig is finally up, but TK, the ever-cunning survivor, isn't out of tricks yet. When unlocking overtime mode, he escapes capture, even manipulating Chuck into a last-ditch errand across the city in exchange for the lives of his loved ones. This leads you to his final stage at the Fortune City Arena, where it all started. Tyrone's death echoes his own manufactured spectacle, with him becoming part of the show he loved so much.
You gotta be willing to risk it all if you're ever really gonna
Amber and Crystal Bailey, the dazzling terror twins of the game, are way more than just Tyrone's glamorous sidekicks. Decked out in a matching gold and silver dress, they light up terror's reality with a blend of flirtation and ferocity that leaves contestants like Chuck Greene both thrilled and a little terrified. Behind the glitzy facade, the sisters are fiercely devoted to TK's twisted empire, doing anything to keep his plans on track. When things go sideways in Fortune City, Amber and Crystal don't just stick to the sidelines, they jump right into the action. They're the ones who hand off the video pinning the zombie outbreak on Chuck, making sure all eyes are on him while Tyrone's real scheme unfolds in the shadow. And when Chuck finally shows up to meet Rebecca, expecting a friendly face, he instead finds a deadly duo waiting with a hostage in one hand and swords in the other. The twins are merciless and eerily in sync. That slide though, their twin telepathy making them a formidable team as they slice and dice with impressive precision. But when Chuck lands a decisive blow, what follows is one of the game's most haunting moments. The surviving twin, overcome with grief, refuses to live without her other half. Ignoring Chuck's shouts, she plunges her katana into her own stomach, choosing to go out in a dramatic fashion rather than face the world alone.
We'll all be part of the change.
Hey, buddy. You okay?
Chuck Greene.
Brandon Whittaker, once a passionate activist with Cure, Brandon went from protesting for zombie rights to literally trying to liberate humanity by turning everyone undead. When you encounter him, Brandon's crazed plan for a better world is already in full swing, one bloody deranged step at a time. Not too far into the game, you'll find Brandon hiding out in a horror movie version of the Americana Casino's men's restroom. Picture shattered mirrors, blood-smeared walls, flickering lights, and a captive zombie lurking in a stall. Brandon's convinced that Chuck shares his warped vision of zombie equality and praises him for supposedly unleashing the horde in Fortune City. To Brandon, this is a master plan for equality because, in his mind, once everyone's a zombie, there is no discrimination. But when Chuck tries to stop Brandon from feeding an innocent woman to his liberated zombie friend, Brandon realizes Chuck isn't the ally he had imagined. Betrayed and enraged, he grabs a jagged shard of broken glass and lunges, declaring you a traitor to the cause.
And I'm taking this thing all the way!
The ensuing fight is very disturbing. Brandon moves like a demented puppet, popping in and out of bathroom stalls like a psychotic version of whack-a-mole, lunging with his glass shard wherever Chuck least expects it. Brandon's moves are unpredictable and vicious. After a grueling fight, you finally take him down. Bleeding and defeated, Brandon stumbles back into the stall where his zombie captive friend waits. In a moment that's half horror, half tragic irony, he's bitten by his fellow friend, realizing he's about to join the ranks of the very monster he wanted to liberate. Brandon, in one last act of self-control, or maybe sheer panic, slashes his own throat, taking himself out before he can turn. That's a little reminder of what happens when you eat one too many Scooby snacks.
looky here if it ain't little Chucky Greene. Didn't get enough of me yet? Come back for my autograph?
Leon Bell is the quintessential former fan turned psycho, bringing his blend of jealousy and mania to the Fortune City outbreak. Once a diehard admirer of Chuck Greene's motocross career, Leon now sees his idol as washed up, weak, and just a shadow of a legend he used to be. Sporting his trademark green and number 23 on his racing gear, Leon's character is all about extremes. He loves danger, craves the thrill, and in his mind, the zombie outbreak isn't just a catastrophe. It's a brand new high-stakes game where people are double points. Leon's rivalry with Chuck starts even before the outbreak. In the terrorist reality introduction, he doesn't hold back, cruelly taunting Chuck about his wife's death, suggesting that Chuck's softness was to blame. But once the chaos in Fortune City erupts, Leon's brand of psychosis goes into overdrive. He transforms into a self-styled predator, hunting down survivors like they're points on a leaderboard. In the mission, Meet the Contestants, Leon confronts Chuck directly, finally spilling his twisted admiration turned contempt for his former hero. Claiming Chuck has lost his edge, Leon's rant turns deadly when he suddenly kills the poor guy, Carlos, with his signature sliceable, a chainsaw-laden death machine, laughing off the murder as a fun score boost. Taunting Chuck, he throws him a bike key, daring him to a brutal motorcycle duel across the Platinum Strip. When Chuck ultimately besses him, Leon's defeat is as theatrical as it is darkly hilarious. His gas tank springs a leak, and determined to go out in a blaze of glory, Leon spins his sliceable dangerously low to the ground. The chainsaw sparks, igniting both the bike and Leon himself. But even as he's engulfed in flames, Leon's competitive spirits won't let him concede.
I'm number one!
Hey, buddy!
Snowflake hungry.
Theodore Ted Smith, or just Ted, is Dead Rising 2's lovable yet tragic tiger trainer, who's definitely one of the game's more unique and loved psychopaths. Before the Fortune City outbreak, Ted was the proud handler of Snowflake, a stunning Bengal tiger who was, in his eyes, his only true friend. But when the zombie apocalypse hit, Ted's world went from performing tricks to fighting for survival. Though for Ted, that means one thing: making sure Snowflake is fed, no matter what it takes. Ted is an imposing figure, large, strong, and dressed in his tiger trainer outfit. He's got a childlike innocence that's both heartwarming and admittedly a bit disturbing. As Chuck Greene enters the Yucatan casino, Ted mistakes him for fresh meat and sees him as the perfect meal for Snowflake. When Chuck tries to calm Ted down and promises to find meat for Snowflake instead, Ted misinterprets Chuck's words as an insult, taking nice and slow to mean that Chuck is calling him slow. And that's when the last straw for Ted, who, fueled by years of bullying and a fierce loyalty to his tiger, unleashes his anger and orders Snowflake to attack. The fight against Ted is one of the strangest and saddest encounters in the game. Ted comes at Chuck with everything he's got: mainly his fist and a handgun, but his real strength lies in a sheer determination to protect his beloved tiger, his friend. While Ted's combat skills are limited, Snowflake adds a wild and unpredictable element to the battle, prowling around and lunging at Chuck, making the fight chaotic and intense. Ted's end is a tragic one. As his health drops, Ted crawls over to a statue, calling out to Snowflake in his final moments, pleading with her to eat him instead, offering himself up as her last meal. In his last breath, Ted finds solace in his devotion to Snowflake, embodying a heartbreaking loyalty that transcends his own survival. Ted's gentle innocence, combined with his sheer determination to protect Snowflake, gives him a complex, almost sympathetic edge. He's not a typical psychopath driven by bloodlust or vengeance. He's just a man in a world he doesn't fully understand, clinging to the one only thing that ever made him feel loved. In the end, Ted is a rare breed, a man whose strength and kindness were neglected by circumstance, leaving him devoted to the only family he ever knew.
Randall, my son, I think you should reconsider what...
Randy!
Father, call me Randy.
Randall Tugman, better known as Randy for short, is a deranged version of a fairy tale groom, but his wedding is the stuff of nightmares, and not in a cold feet kind of way. Picture an overly enthusiastic man in a tighter-than-skin fetish suit, wielding a giant pink chainsaw as he waits for his reluctant bride in a makeshift chapel during a zombie apocalypse. For him, the end of the world just means it's finally time to say, I do, whether his bride, Danny Bodine, wants to or not. When Chuck arrives at the swept-away chapel during the mission Here Comes the Groom, Randy's got his poor father, Emmanuel, tied up and forced to officiate the wedding, all while Danny struggles to escape her restraints. His father, visibly horrified, stammers through the vows as Randy revs his oversized chainsaw, practically drooling with excitement. But just as Emmanuel is forced to perform his sacred duty, he notices Chuck lurking nearby and calls for help. This catches Randy's attention, and in a traumatic and disturbing scene, he accidentally slices into his dad's abdomen with the chainsaw. And while most people might stop to grieve, Randy's more upset that his big day has been interrupted. In the ensuing battle, Randy is as unhinged as he is persistent. He charges Chuck like a lovesick freight train, swinging his comically large pink chainsaw with the intensity of a man who thinks he's on The Bachelor. Every step, every swing is accompanied by Randy's unsettling romantic rants, as if he's still convinced that he's just moments away from his dream wedding. Finally, after a hard-fought battle, no, not that hard, Randy is down but not quite out. As he lies on his back, he sees a silhouette approach, a bride, his beloved, come to rescue him at last. Randy, ever the romantic, calls out to her, but fate's got a twisted end. That bride is actually the girl he killed earlier. She lunges at him, sinking her teeth into his flesh as he screams in disbelief, consumed by his own undead happily ever after.
You may now kiss the bride.
I mean, where's the challenge? Yeah, this ain't nearly as fun as Border Patrol.
The Hunters are a ragtag group of rooftop snipers who see the zombie apocalypse as the ultimate hunting ground, and Chuck Greene as their new favorite target. These four psychopaths, Dietz Hartman, Derek Duggan, Earl Flaherty, and Johnny James, are holed up in various rooftops around Fortune Park with sniper rifles in hand, ready to pick off zombies, survivors, and Chuck himself just for kicks. The Hunters are the kind of group that thinks they're untouchable, channeling a vigilante vibe straight out of an action movie, but with way more delusion and way less humanity. They see the chaos in Fortune City as a prime hunting opportunity, like it's their twisted version of big game hunting. From their lofty perches, they take shots at anything that moves, and each has their own prime sniping spot that turns Chuck's trek through Fortune Park into a deadly game of hide and seek. And these guys, they play for keeps. As Chuck makes his way through the park, he encounters each hunter perched in specific spots, each guarding their rooftop with eagle-eyed precision. Johnny James is waiting atop the Royal Flush Plaza. Derek Duggan's staked out on the Atlantic Casino rooftop. Earl Flaherty lurks on the scaffolding of an unfinished building near Moses' Imaginations, and Dietz Hartman hunkers down atop the movie theater. It's like a sniper safari, except Chuck's the one being hunted, and every shot that lands causes him a solid 2 blocks of health. The Hunters don't have an end cutscenes or any big cinematic moments. With their "you're either with us or against us" attitude and a gleeful disregard for human life, the Hunters represent the twisted side of vigilante justice in a city gone wild.
Let's go hunting, boys!
Brent Ernst, better known as Slappy, is what happens when a kid's mascot takes a hard left turn into absolute insanity. Once the cheerful, roller skating face of Kids' Choice Clothing, Slappy was the type of guy who loved his job, maybe a little too much. Decked out in his giant, grinning mascot head, he was always the life of the mall, rolling around on oversized skates and cracking jokes for the kids. But underneath the painted smile, Slappy had a big crush on his fellow mascot, Louise Jameson. The two were set for a first date when disaster struck. The Fortune City outbreak hit, and Louise was torn apart by zombies. Slappy snapped big time. When Chuck Greene first stumbles upon him, Slappy's far from the happy-go-lucky mascot he once was. Now, he's on a mission of vengeance, convinced by TV gossip that Chuck's responsible for the whole zombie mess, and therefore the reason Louise is gone. As soon as he spots Chuck, Slappy rolls up terrifyingly and starts spinning a story about his dear sweet Louise, painting Chuck as a monster for ruining their chances at love. Chuck tries to backpedal, but Slappy's not having it. He's all revved up and ready to roast. And so begins one of the most ridiculous, fiery battles in the game. Slappy doesn't just attack, he skates around like he's a demented parade, spewing jets of fire from his dual flamethrowers made out of children's toys. This is disturbing, all while spouting catchphrases like some warped children's TV character. Every turn and blast comes with a dose of melodrama. Slappy's putting on a show after all. Chuck has to dodge flaming blasts, explosive splash damage, and roller skating insanity, all while trying to knock some sense into the mascot from hell. After a fierce battle, Slappy's inevitable end is as tragically absurd as his life. He crawls over to Louisa's lifeless body, muttering about their forever love, clutching her like some bizarre stuffed toy.
I'm coming to pick you up in just a minute.
Before finally succumbing, his twisted fantasy extinguished at last.
There. Don't worry, kids. Slappy will live forever.
Yeah, that's it.
Seymour Redding is the deranged sheriff Fortune City never asked for. When the zombie outbreak hits, Seymour, a mall security guard with a power complex, seizes the chaos as his golden opportunity to enforce his twisted brand of justice. Trading in his security badge for a makeshift badge of authority, Seymour rigs up a gallows in the South Plaza, declaring himself judge, jury, and executioner. Survivors wandering nearby are quickly condemned as looters, making him a psychotic cowboy in a city already overrun by zombies. When you stumble upon Seymour in the middle of a trial, Seymour has cornered a man named Justin Tetherford, loudly accusing him of being a looter. Poor Justin tries to defend himself, claiming he was just looking for food, but Seymour has no patience for pleas. With a smug smile, he shoves Justin off the edge, sending him into a fatal neck-snapping fall. When he spots Chuck nearby, Seymour's eyes gleam with that same warped righteousness, labeling Chuck as a looter and revving up for a showdown. The ensuing fight pits Chuck against a madman with a sheriff's complex. Seymour swings his weapon with a fury that's almost comedic, taunting Chuck with threats and insults as he plays out his lawman fantasy. But Chuck, no stranger to facing psychos, fights back and ultimately gets the better of him. Seymour's defeat comes with a delicate twist of irony. As he tries to make a dramatic escape, he scrambles up a nearby statue for a quick getaway, inadvertently kicking on a table saw in the process. Climbing desperately, Seymour shouts back, claiming to be twice the man Chuck is. But fate had other plans that night. He loses his grip, falls directly into the spinning saw, and meets a gruesome end. Seymour's story in the game is the classic tale of power gone to the wrong head, turning an already questionable security guard into a judge, executioner, and ultimately his own worst enemy. Antoine Thomas, the self-proclaimed king of cuisine, is a chef with a gourmet dream and a truly dark secret. Known as Chef Antoine, he runs a cookware shop in Royal Flush Plaza and believes he's one 5-star review away from culinary fame. But when the zombie outbreak hits Fortune City, it's not just his shot at fame that dies. His sanity seems to go out the window too.
It's true what they say. Tastes like chicken.
When you first encounter Antoine during the mission Tastes Like Chicken, It's in the Cocina Donaci restaurants and the food courts where Antoine is cooking up a storm of monstrous proportions. Delusional and desperate, to make a lasting impression, Antoine mistakes you for a famous food critic, proudly offering him a dish that's better left unsaid. Chuck quickly realizes there's something disturbingly extra in Antoine's cuisine. Horrified, blurts out,
Who the hell would want to eat this?
instantly shattering Antoine's culinary fantasy. That's all it takes to push Antoine over the edge. Enraged, he picks up a chef's knife, ranting about how you're going to be the next addition to his disgusting menu. The ensuing fight is brutal and bizarre. Chef Antoine uses everything from kitchen utensils to dishes, checking them with startling precision. After an intense showdown, Antoine is finally defeated, but he doesn't go down gracefully. Antoine stumbles back, reaching for supports on the counter, only for his hand to slip, plunging his arm into a vat of boiling hot grease. His screams echo throughout the kitchen as he inadvertently dunks his head into the fryer, sealing his grisly end in the very kitchen where he hoped to earn fame.
Abracadabra! Damn it! Roger, you idiot!
Reed Walbeck and Roger Withers are magicians, though calling them magicians is generous. These two were floundering performers before the outbreak, struggling to wow Fortune City with cheap tricks and veiled illusions. But after the zombie apocalypse, something snapped in both of them, and now they're set on becoming the world's deadliest magic act. In the mission World's Most Dangerous Trick, Chuck stumbles upon this outrageous duo rehearsing their new act. The scene is like a twisted Las Vegas show gone horribly wrong. Reed, the loud-mouthed, self-styled star of the act, is berating his silent, long-suffering assistant, Roger, as they prepare their last trick, sawing a terrified hostage, Madison Laney, in half with a massive buzzsaw. Reed, oblivious to the horror of it all, is treating this grim stunt like his big Vegas debut, but things go horribly awry, and Madison's life is brutally cut short, no pun intended. Reed, insulted and delusional, sees Chuck as a heckler messing up his show. He dramatically pulls out a rocket launcher because, why not, and declares Chuck the next act. The fight that ensues is nothing short of a pyrotechnic circus. Reed, ever the showman, launches rockets with reckless abandon. Meanwhile, Roger, the silent assistant, charges at Chuck with a sword, doing his best to keep up the Reed's over-the-top theatrics. It's a battle of absurd proportions. What makes this fight truly entertaining is not the magic tricks themselves, but rather Reed's absolute commitment to showbiz. And Roger, he's the perfect silent sidekick, reluctantly playing along like he's in too deep to back out now. When you finally bring down their act, the curtain falls. Reed, wounded and gasping, lies on the floor, looking every bit the tragic hero in his mind. But then Roger, crawling over with a wild look in his eyes, decides to seize the spotlight once and for all. With a wicked grin, he stabs Reed, whispering that he'd always wanted to do that. And in a sickly poetic ending, Roger succumbs to his wounds right after, leaving this world's deadliest act to take their final blood-soaked bow together. Bibi Love. Wow. She is a washed-up pop star who's clinging to her former glory with a vice grip. Once a show-stopping performer, Bibi now finds herself facing her biggest challenge yet, a zombie apocalypse with no real fans left to adore her. But in her mind, the show must go on, even if her fans are bloodthirsty zombies, and her audience includes a few very unlucky hostages. When you first stumble upon Bibi in the mission One Hit Wonder, where she's taken over a stage in the Slot Ranch casino and wired her poor employees, Quan, Allison, and Cameron, with explosives to ensure they don't leave the show before her grand finale. When Chuck arrives, she mistakes you for a stagehand and ropes you into helping her. Bibi's got a checklist to rival a diva's dream rider. She needs refreshments, a tuxedo for Chuck, because every good stagehand needs to be stylish, a crowd of fans, and the stage lights rigged for her big number. If Chuck obliges, he's rewarded with a surreal minigame where he becomes her unofficial lighting director, hitting button prompts in time with her performance, and a rhythm game similar to Guitar Hero. If Chuck nails the light show, Bibi rewards him with a heartfelt thank you and lets her hostages go before attempting to stage dive straight into the arms of her fans. Here, you have a choice: save Bibi from her misguided leap, or let her, shall we say, meet her fans.
Signature required. A signature is required for delivery!
Hey, buddy. I don't think there's anyone there.
Carl Schliff, the mailman with glasses larger than life, is as obsessed with delivering packages as he is with defending the honor of the U.S. Postal Service. When the world falls apart, Carl stands tall, or at least insists on completing his deliveries, even if it means going postal. In the mission Mail Order Zombrex, Chuck stumbles upon Carl in the Royal Flush Plaza, mail carts in tow, yelling at storefronts for anyone, to sign his package. When you point out the obvious that the town's overrun by zombies, Carl brushes you off, seeing it as a poor excuse for neglecting one's civic duty. He proudly shares that he swore an oath which no number of zombies, or common sense, could ever make him break. Chuck, noticing that Carl's prized package is Zombrex, sees an opportunity and offers to sign for it. But when Carl realizes he's face to face with Chuck Greene, who he believes caused the outbreak, he refuses to hand over the medicine. Instead, he gives Chuck a special delivery, which is pretty obvious, a ticking time bomb, declaring that Chuck's attack on the Postal Service is basically an attack on the US. Chuck manages to hurl the bomb back, blowing up Carl's precious mail carts and shattering his otherwise flawless record. Infuriated and convinced Chuck is personally responsible for all of Fortune City's woes, Carl grabs his shotgun, vowing to uphold the postal honor and protect his country from the so-called anarchist like Chuck. The battle with Carl is like a slapstick version of the Terminator, with Carl alternating between blasting away with his shotgun, swinging it around in close combats, and chucking explosive special deliveries. Whenever Chuck gets too close, Carl's dedication to his job is almost admirable, if only it weren't so terrifying. He screams about the sanctity of his duty, firing off his shotgun and hurling bombs, truly believing he's the last line of defense between civilization and utter chaos. In the end, Carl's demise is as explosively patriotic as his cause. With his dying breath, Carl signs his clipboard in a final symbolic act of dedication to his duty then pulls out another mail bomb and lets it detonate, blowing himself into postal pieces. Chuck, unfazed and missing his one-liners, picks up the Zombrex for his daughter, a small victory over Carl's twisted sense of patriotism.
This one's a special delivery. Express.
Let's go! Ready to kick some ass, ladies? You know the drill. First we mop up, then we grab the survivors. Start with the north end, move down.
Sergeant Dwight Boykin is honestly very tragic. A soldier turned psychopath, a man whose mission to rescue survivors in Fortune City spirals into madness after witnessing the unimaginable horror of the gas zombie outbreak. At first, Boykin is in the epitome of a noble military leader, arriving with his squad to restore order, neutralize the undead, and rescue any civilians trapped in the city. But the game takes a sharp, dark turn when a green gas fills the area, transforming the regular zombies into fast, aggressive monsters that quickly overwhelm his men. What starts as a rescue operation becomes a nightmare that leaves Boykin scarred, both physically and mentally. Boykin's descent begins as he watches his squad get torn apart by the gas zombies in a gory, chaotic slaughter. Desperate to save them, he tries pulling his soldier to safety, only to find himself holding nothing but a dismembered arm of the fallen comrade. Terrified from the horror, Boykin escapes into the underground tunnels, but his mind is shattered. When Chuck finds him, Boykin is a man living in a fractured reality, talking to the corpses of his squad mates as if they're still alive, ordering them to cover the flanks and provide ammo. And as if he weren't tragic enough already, Boykin has taken Rebecca Chang hostage in his paranoid belief that he's still fighting to protect his people from the undead, including Chuck. The battle with Boykin is one of the game's most intense encounters. Armed with military-grade weaponry and grenades, Boykin fights like he's back in combat, blending close-range brutality with deadly long-range tactics. At times, he'll even run to his fallen soldiers for more ammo, speaking to them as if they're still his loyal team. It's a bizarre, heartbreaking performance that shows how far his mind has slipped, turning what should be a heroic character into a tragic foe. But as powerful and relentless as Boykin is, Chuck eventually wears him down, and in his final moments, Boykin, still trapped in his hallucinations, believes he's about to be turned into one of those monsters he despises. In a last act of defiance, he pulls the pin on his own grenade, effectively ending his life before the zombie he believes Chuck to be can turn him. His actions aren't motivated by greed or sadism. Instead, he's a man torn apart by trauma, trapped in a waking nightmare that forces him to fight against the very people he set out to save. He's a hero broken by horror, a man who came to save the day but ended up lost in the fog of war, literally and figuratively.
Sarge! You gotta get us out of here!
Raymond Sullivan is the classic wolf in sheep's clothing. Initially playing the role of the gruff, no-nonsense security officer in charge of the Fortune City Emergency Shelter, to everyone, Sullivan seems like the dependable guy that keeps things under control during the outbreak, sternly enforcing the rules to keep survivors safe. But beneath his badge and just doing my job attitude, Sullivan is actually a cold, calculating agent of phenotrans. At first, Sullivan comes across as a bit of a stickler for rules. He's suspicious of Chuck from the start, especially when he notices a bite scar on Chuck's daughter, Katey. But ever the dutiful officer, he allows Chuck and Katey to stay in the shelter, as long as Chuck keeps providing Zombrex to prevent Katey from turning and helps rescue survivors to prove his innocence. To Chuck, Sullivan is just an irritating authority figure who doesn't seem to care much for him, let alone believe in his innocence. As the story unfolds, Chuck and Rebecca Chang uncover the dark truth. Phenotrans, the company producing Zombrex, is behind the Fortune City outbreak. Demand for Zombrex had dwindled since the last major outbreak in Las Vegas, and Phenotrans needed to rekindle that demand by creating a new crisis. Just when Chuck and Rebecca think they've exposed everything, Sullivan reveals his true colors in a shocking twist. He's been working for Phenotrans all along. In a move worthy of any classic bad guy, Sullivan shoots Rebecca in cold blood and claims that he orchestrated the outbreak, going so far as to explain that Zombrex production relies on harvesting queens from zombies. To keep the Zombrex supply flowing, more outbreaks are absolutely necessary. The man Chuck thought was just an irritating bureaucrat is, in reality, the mastermind behind the entire catastrophe. Sullivan's final showdown with Chuck takes place on the rooftop of Yucatan Casino, where he's equipped with a Fulton skyhook for a dramatic escape by an AC-130 extraction. Their fight is one of high tension, with Sullivan taunting Chuck about his short-sighted morals while defending Phenotrans' ruthless business model as a necessary evil. The fight is fierce, but Chuck isn't letting him escape, not after learning that Phenotrans, and by extension Sullivan, was responsible for his wife's death and daughter's infection. In a final moment, Chuck manages to handcuff Sullivan's skyhook harness to a railing just as the AC-130 arrives, tearing Sullivan in half when it tries to extract him. Sullivan escapes, but only in pieces. Raymond Sullivan is the game's ultimate portrayal. The trusted officer who turns out to be a merciless corporate agent willing to sacrifice countless lives for profit. He's the guy who hides behind the badge, playing the hero while pulling the strings behind the scenes, making him one of the series' most complex villains. His cold rationalization of mass outbreaks as a necessary evil only heightens the drama, setting up a showdown where Sullivan's final escape literally tears him apart, in a fittingly brutal end for the man who orchestrated so much destruction.
Channel 6 Action News. This is Chuck Greene. You want the scoop of a lifetime? There's a bunker full of survivors in Fortune City, and I've got the proof of what happened here. I need rescue choppers, and I need them right now.
Harjit Singh, known as the Commander, isn't just a security chief. He's a hammer-swinging madman with a thirst for chaos. Known for his brutal tactics, Harjit's not interested in subtlety. During the Las Vegas outbreak, he kicks things off by unleashing jars of infected queens into the crowd, triggering an instant panic. By the time Case West rolls around, he's back, badder than ever, with dual impact hammers in hand, relishing in the chance to smash anything in his way. When Frank and Chuck infiltrate Phenotran's lab, they're met by Harjit, who launches into a hammer-swinging showdown, taunting them with insults and bombarding them with propane tanks. This isn't just a fight, it's his idea of fun, but his reign of terror meets a fitting end, backed into a containment tube filled with zombie queens, the very thing he's been using to create outbreaks. Harjit's stung to death by the horrors he unleashed. Then there's Dr. Marion Mallon, Phenotran's director and the ultimate corporate puppet master. Far from the front lines, Marion orchestrates disaster from the safety of her glass-walled office, fueled by her vision of progress. Having survived a zombie attack back in 2004, she's obsessed with monetizing humanity's desperation by selling Zombrex to keep the population hooked and fearful. Immune to the virus herself, Marion hoards the cure, deciding the fates of humanity with smug indifference. When Frank and Chuck reach Marion, she delivers a speech about the greater good, explaining how she's been saving the cure herself while the world scrambles to survive. Shortly after, Marion triggers the facility's self-destruct button, sending the lab into chaos. Alarms blare and Marion escapes, leaving everyone to face the flames. Together, Harjit's reckless brutality and Marion's cold cunning embody Phenotran's ruthless spirit. Harjit's relentless pursuit of violence ends in a swarm of his own queens, while Marion, the puppet master, leaves her empire to burn behind her. MacIntyre, aka Stilts the Clown, is the pint-sized psychopath with a big grudge. As the younger brother of Adam MacIntyre, yes, that chainsaw-wielding clown from the original Dead Rising, Evan is here to settle a family score. When he spots Frank wandering around Fortune City, Evan, at first, treats him like any old customer, offering Frank some flavors from his ice cream stash. But then a signed Frank West photo floats to his feet, triggering memories of Adam's death. The shock and grief turn Evan's friendly approach into a twisted vendetta. Frank killed Adam, and now he has to not only pay for that ice cream, but also with his life. Evan and Adam may be brothers, but their approach to clowning and carnage is a study in contrasts. Where Adam brought the heat using fiery tricks and twin chainsaws, Evan is all about ice. He's equipped with a snowball cannon that freezes Frank in his tracks, letting him lumber up on his mismatched stilts and deliver punishing kicks. But Evan's also got liquid nitrogen bombs that freeze Frank's feet to the floor, creating an eerie contrast to Adam's blazing attacks from Dead Rising. Evan is here to serve Frank the icebreaker. Halfway through the fight, Frank finally manages to knock Evan off his stilts, revealing that the clown has been concealing his true height all along. The deception is a classic MacIntyre theatrics, with Evan compensating for his stature by literally towering over his victims. And when he's off his stilts, Evan becomes even more relentless, charging Frank with an energy that matches Adam's relentless chase with his twin chainsaws. Despite their opposite themes, fire and ice, both brothers use relentless speed and unexpected moves to keep Frank on his toes.
Frank West, you're going to try all of my flavors!
In Evan's final moments, after struggling to grab one last freeze grenade from his car, it detonates in his hands, freezing him solid. He lets out one last cold gasp before Frank finishes him off, kicking the frozen Evan into a pile of shattered pieces.
Y'all scream for ice cream.
Stacey Forsythe is one of Dead Rising's most unpredictable characters, a zombie rights activist turned queen of double crosses. In Dead Rising 2, she's introduced as Chuck Greene's biggest ally, the caring cure leader who's just as passionate about zombie rights as Chuck is about protecting his daughter. She's all about protesting terror's reality, calling out the government to make Zombrex affordable, and leading rallies to treat zombies with dignity. With her fierce commitment to heartwarming backstory, Stacey seems like the ultimate ally, until the outbreak turns Fortune City into a nightmare, and we start seeing hints that maybe, just maybe, there's more to Stacey than meets the eye. Initially, Stacey is Chuck's partner in survival, holding down the forts at the safe house and watching over Katey. She's the voice on the other end of Chuck's radio, guiding him to survivors with that sweet, empathetic tone and showing admiration for the way he cares for his daughter. She even confides in Chuck about her own infected sister, who decided to let herself turn rather than continue with the endless, soul-crushing Zombrex regimen. It's clear that Stacey has a heart, and she's the perfect person to protect Katey while Chuck fights to clear his name and figure out who's really behind the Fortune City outbreak. And when Chuck discovers the real villain is none other than Phenotrans, Stacey appears to have his back. Chuck rushes into the safe house with evidence that Phenotrans is engineering outbreaks to keep Zombrex in high demand. And Stacey is as shocked as anyone when Phenotrans agent Raymond Sullivan suddenly turns on them. Stacey even throws herself at him, helping Chuck get the upper hand and sending Sullivan scrambling for the rooftop. It seems Stacey really is the hero she claimed to be, devoted to her cause, until it goes off the record. In this version, the script is flipped, and everything we thought we knew about her. Stacey transforms from Chuck's ally to Frank West's worst nightmare, trading in her cure credentials for a secret identity. An undercover Phenotrans operative, far from the zombie sympathizing activist she pretended to be, Stacey masterminded the outbreak to turn Cure from a protest group into a weapon for creating chaos. Her real mission? Stir up outbreaks to harvest zombie queens for Zombrex production, ensuring Phenotrans can keep cashing in on the infection. By the time Frank finds out, it's almost too late. Stacey's ready to do whatever it takes to protect her secret. When you finally confront her, Stacey shoots Rebecca Chang and bolts from the bunker, sparking a chase through Fortune City. But Stacey's not going down without a final showstopper. She calls in Phenotrans mercenaries and unleashes terrifying queen harvesting machines across the city, just in time to harvest a fresh batch before the military firebombs Fortune City. Frank pursues her through the chaos and into Uranus Zone, where she has one last surprise up her sleeve: a monstrous, crab-like mech. Stacey, once a zombie rights activist, now pilots a multi-limbed killing machine, prattling about how all those pest zombies will keep Zombrex money rolling in. In a climactic showdown, Frank brings down her mech, launching into a hand-to-hand battle right in the cockpit. Stacey's calm, collected activist persona is replaced by a ruthless, unhinged Phenotrans loyalist who will do anything to protect her corporate masters. She fights tooth and nail, but Frank overpowers her, sending her plummeting down to her final resting place amid twisted metal and zombie carnage. In the end, Stacey's fall is as epic as her betrayal. A high-stakes showdown that leaves Frank and players reeling from one of the series' greatest plot twists.
Always thought you had a crush on me. Too bad I don't dig flat chicks. Channel 6 Action News. This is Frank West. Someone lied to you. There's a bunker full of survivors in Fortune City. I need rescue choppers. And I need them right now. Before that firebombing begins.
Chuck Greene, once the main character that you play in the original game Dead Rising 2, now takes on a dark twist. In this alternate scenario, Chuck has lost everything, including his daughter Katey, to the very zombie outbreak he fought so hard to survive. Once the hero of Fortune City, he's now become the very thing he fought against. A broken, deranged psychopath haunted by the ghost of his little girl. Chuck's journey from hero to unhinged wanderer is tragic and hauntingly ironic. Where he was once known for his quiet strength and unwavering commitment to keeping Katey alive, now, and off the record, he's a shadow of his former self, scruffy, with greasy, unkempt hair and permanently haunted look in his eyes. Chuck is carrying around a doll duct taped to his back, one that eerily resembles Katey. He mumbles to her about Zombrex and safety, as if she's still with him. You stumble upon Chuck in the middle of Fortune City, standing by his beloved Slicycle, talking to the doll as if it were his real daughter. Gone are the days of the heroic motocross stunts. Chuck's now on a warped mission of survival fueled by whiskey and rage. Frank tries to reason with Chuck, inviting him to the safe house, hoping to snap him out of his state. But when Frank accidentally grabs Katey's leg, Chuck snaps. His eyes flash with fury as he accuses Frank of trying to hurt her, tossing his whiskey bottle aside and lunging at Frank with a raw, desperate violence. Frank's attempt to calm him only made things worse, and Chuck, now seeing Frank as an enemy, jumps on his Slicycle, revs it up, and begins a deadly chase, aiming to run you down in a twisted mockery of his former stunt riding glory. The battle that ensues is intense and tragic. Chuck's Slicycle roars as he barrels towards Frank, a man who was once a responsible father now transformed into an erratic force of fury and grief. Every swing of his wrench and scream of frustration is a reminder of the weight he's carried since losing Katey. He calls out to her, swearing he's going to keep her safe, his mind clearly fractured. Frank has no choice but to defend himself, trying to stay one step ahead of Chuck's rampage. After a tense fight, Chuck is finally knocked off his bike, landing heavily on the ground. Instead of attacking Frank, he crawls towards Katey, catering to her, clutching the doll's head in his hand.
That's all that matters. I can't imagine what I would do if anything ever happened to you.
Man, that guy was a few screws short of a workbench.
In Fortune City, the only fortune you'll find is the kind that drives people mad. Each boss, from performers to a deranged chef, turns a zombie outbreak into a psychological freak show, where the true horror is just how far people can fall. Dead Rising 2 takes everything fans loved from the original and dials it up to 11, with new combo weapons, crazier bosses, and the added tension of Chuck's mission to keep his daughter alive. The game builds on the original's charm while diving deeper into its disturbing lore, making Fortune City a perfect next stop in the series. In a world that lost all sense of its reality, these psychopaths reveal how life adapts to its surroundings, for better or for worse.